Okay, so guys, let's continue where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we spoke a little bit about how exactly to kasher your utensils. I'm going to recap that just for 30 seconds because I went through it yesterday. I realized we weren't here yesterday. I'll do a little quick recap. And it is that any utensil that was used with non-kosher food with liquid heat. Liquid heat means that it was a pot, you cook something in any pot, and even if it's not like a lot of liquid, like a soup for example, even if it's just like a meat, but even when you cook meat in a pot, there's going to be a lot of juice around it. So if that's the method you're using your utensil, then the way to kasher that is with what we call hagala. Hagala is something that you do with 4 steps. The first thing you do is you make sure it's thoroughly cleaned. Then you wait 24 hours. After you have done 24 hours of waiting time, then you take a big bucket or big pot, I would say, of water. It doesn't have to be huge at all, just a pot of water. You cook water in there until it's really boiling, gets to a boiling point that the water is literally dancing, and you insert your utensil in the water. That doesn't have to be immersed in one go. Why am I saying this? It's because when you're immersing a utensil in a keli mikveh, there actually is a requirement. The item has to be entirely underwater in one go. For example, can I just take this as an example? If this is, for example, a spoon that requires, guys, just put on your imagination. This is a spoon for now, okay, guys?
It's an expensive spoon.
Nowadays, you can just say, like, in my reality, this is I believe this is a spoon. So that's what we're doing right now. If this is a spoon and you have to immerse that in water now, I hope it's water resistant, then you have to immerse it in water in one go. The whole thing has to be water in one go. That means that you can't just insert one piece, take it out, and do the other part. The whole thing has to be underwater in one go. Okay? When we get to the laws of how to do that, to be less scaling, I'll go through that again. But if this was a spoon that you're trying to make kosher and not trying to immerse in a keli mikveh, then you can just do one part in, take it out, and do the other part. And that's actually quite useful because it's very hard to immerse something in boiling hot water in one go. You don't want to burn your hands. Chas v'shalom. So therefore, if you hold it on with some tongs, put it in, take it out, and put it in.
But if you use the tongs, isn't that covering the space that
you release a little bit, or
Yeah.
That's actually, and then it falls in the bottom of the pot. That's just generally how it goes. Part of the mess of kashering is that stuff falls in the bottom of the pot. It's not a problem. You just have to grab it out afterwards again, and then you take it straight away. And that's our 4th step. You put it in a bowl of cold water. Yeah.
Would it be permissible to let the pot, reduce its boil, like basically stop boiling and then remove it?
As long as you immersed it at the time of immersion, when you put it in, it wasn't at boiling point and water was dancing, you can, yeah.
You could basically turn off the stove, let it stop.
The only thing is that it's ideal to, as soon as possible, insert that utensil in the cold water. So if you wait very, very long, then you may not have that effect. And we spoke, the reason why we do that is because when you have heat, then the material becomes more porous, and afterwards when you place it in cold water, it becomes less porous and everything closes up again. And we want to, when something just became kosher, we want to make sure that nothing new gets trapped in there. Okay, that's basically the process of kashering. There was something a little bit in detail here on the deeper level that I wanted to explain, because you might want to know about all the steps. We said we have 4 steps. I guess the cleaning part you guys understand. It has to be thoroughly cleaned, because if it's not thoroughly cleaned, there may actually be non-kosher residue on it. So that step we can understand. We can take that off. Okay? Now the 24-hour period, that needs a bit more understanding. Why do you need to wait 24 hours? Like, wouldn't it just be so much more practical if something either went wrong in a kitchen and became not kosher, or if you want to right now kosher a utensil that was used half an hour ago, why can't you just clean it thoroughly now and just straight away immerse it in the water and then dip it in the cold water? So the 3 out of 4 steps we're clear on. Why we need to clean, we can tick that box. Why we have to immerse in hot water, that's the main part of kashering. I guess we understand why you have to do that. Why you have to immerse it afterwards into some cold water, we've also explained, to make sure that it becomes non-porous or less porous at least. So why is the 24-hour waiting period? And this is a fundamental point that I would like to speak out in the general halacha of hilchos kashrus. I see you have a question, Sally. Can you just remind me your first name again?
Alex.
Alex, please.
In my mind, I feel like waiting 24 hours would be counterproductive. Actually, the opposite, because it gives chance for more, non-kosher materials to effect is. It would make sense to clean it and then immediately go to the.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. What I'm hearing from you is you're saying, like, specifically if you're like in a surrounding or an environment of a non-kosher household, it's very possible that, you just want to make this, you want to kosher your spoon. So if you're going to leave it around afterwards, who knows what's going to happen to it, right? If you like want to make sure this is going to be kosher, going to stay kosher, clean it, put it in hot water, cold, and now it's kosher. Done and over it. I hear that. That's a great question. So I would advise you definitely on that note that if you have any utensils you want to kosher and you have the 24-hour waiting period, make sure to keep it separate in a safe place that you know at least that no one has used it in the meantime. That's a good thing to point out. So why do we have
If you're in a
24?
non-kosher place, why would you be kosher?
Why would you kosher something?
You can have like your drawer of kosher. I don't know. Let's say like you're at your family's place, they're not kosher. You have your drawer of your kosher utensils or something.
You don't want the chance. Okay.
Yeah, or like, if your family says like, our house is not kosher, but we have a couple of pots that we're not using now anyway. You're more than welcome to kosher them for yourself and keep them. We'll make sure to keep them separate. We respect that. If that's the approach of your family, that's wonderful. That's great. But then you'll have to know exactly how to do that, and that's why we're actually going through this now. So why is it 24-hour waiting period? Okay, this is important. It's an important detail over here, but it's in general important halacha. So we spoke a lot about the concept of blias. Blias are absorbed taste particles, okay? Now, absorbed taste particles are so small, it's not actual food. It's a taste element. It's a minute thing to the extent that they get absorbed within metal. That's how tiny they are. In fact, we needed a special posuk in the Torah to teach us that those taste particles are actually problematic, because the basic logic maybe would have told us the other way around, that as long as it's not real pieces of food, so who cares if there's any taste particles? Why is that a problem? So the Torah tells us that taste particles are problematic, and that's why we have to go through all this process of kashering and making sure that all the taste particles have been removed. That's why we're doing that. But yes, Salik.
Can you explain what it means to taste particle? You taste something, that means it's the food. It's the actual particle of the food, no?
But it's not called halachically. In Hebrew we call it be'en. It's not a real piece of food. Meaning, there's a difference halachically between a piece of food that's stuck to a pot and when you clean it entirely, and something that's been absorbed within a metal.
Okay.
So halachically we just view that differently. Shlomo, you had a question?
So we learned today about that it cancels out if it's like less than a 60th.
Where did you learn that?
And with Eid.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Nullification of 60. That's really what I'm going to mention. So please.
So it's just interesting that, if the taste doesn't really affect, if you can't really taste it, like using a spoon for cereal and it's been used in a non-kosher, like let's say for mixing up pots or something.
Yeah.
If there's no taste, then why do you have to go up the extra steps?
I like that. So there's 2 points. One simple answer, but it's not the real answer, but it's true anyway. That is, there is a prohibition to go ahead and nullify something. What does that mean? In Hebrew, there's a term called, which we apply in kashrut a lot, ein mevatlin isur l'chatchila. One should not ideally go ahead and nullify a prohibition and then say, oh, it's nullified, now I can eat it. When we talk about nullification, that's after effect. If you by mistake drop like a tiny tad of coffee, a drop of coffee in your huge pot of chicken soup, and you have 60 times the amount of chicken soup over your coffee, that's called nullification. It was by mistake. You just walked past with your coffee and a tiny little
Like
bit of
milkish coffee.
milky coffee, or even a real milk. Yeah, and that's fine. If you're gluten-free fried,
doesn't mean you can drop quicker.
that's what we're saying. Exactly like Baruch is saying. Like, you can't go ahead and drop something in there like, oh, let's do beetle now, let's nullify it now. That's not going to work. That's a prohibition. But if it happened after the fact, so then we have the rules of nullification. Do you have 60 times the amount of kosher versus non-kosher?
Okay.
Then you can apply the
But
rules
we
of
don't rely on
nullification.
that. We don't. And it's not something we go towards exactly. It's like
If it
it's not
happens,
intentional.
it's not an intentional thing, but we do rely on this. This is ideal to rely on. Like, no rabbi will tell you, in my scenario of the chicken soup, if you mistakenly dropped a tiny bit of milk in there, no rabbi will tell you, oh, throw out the chicken soup, it's better. That is what halacha teaches us, and we rely on that. However crazy it sounds and however much it's true, there is actually a little bit of chicken soup that was cooked, a little bit of milk that's cooked in your chicken soup, and it's crazy to think about that. But that's fine. That's what halacha teaches us. The same way we sometimes have to be stringent in certain situations. Here we also need to have what we call the emunas chachamim, rely on the rabbis, that it's absolutely fine when you have that minute amount which is being nullified. Okay, but what's happening over here? So you mentioned something about nullification. We're speaking about 24 hours, so let's just put that all together, paste it together, and we'll get an understanding why actually one has to wait 24 hours when they do Haggalah. And that is, those taste particles we just spoke about, in Hebrew we call them blios, okay? So just like your food, when you buy a package of food, it has an expiry date. Best before, it says. Expiry date. The Torah also gave an expiry date to your blios. Interesting. And the expiry date of those blios is 24 hours. Interesting. The Torah says that taste particles after 24 hours become stale, go off. And because they go off, we don't care about them anymore. Taste particles that the Torah said are prohibited are only fresh taste particles within the last 24 hours. Now this gives you a very different perspective on the laws of kasher.
What does that mean? It's not good, like it's spoiled? Or what does
It's
it mean?
spoiled.
So
It's
can you cook spoiled basar challah?
So let's speak about this. Basar b'challah may be something else, but let's speak about an example of a non-kosher pot. If there's a non-kosher pot that was used 3 days ago, or even 1 day ago, it's been 24 hours since. It's been scrubbed well. There is not one bit of grime on there, not one bit of residue on it. The only problem you have with this pot is that you have those absorbed food particles called blias. But those blias, are they over 24 hours old or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are spoiled. So now I'm going to tell you something fascinating. That as far as the Torah is concerned, there is no issue to cook in this pot right now. There's no issue. Because even if you cook in there, and any of those taste particles get expelled into your food, that's not a problem because they are non-problematic, non-kosher food particles. They're not problematic because they have gone off. They're spoiled. They're stale. And the Torah clearly said we don't care about those non-fresh food particles. So as far as the Torah is concerned, the food does not become non-kosher on the biblical level. Now rabbinically, we have many different extensions over here, and therefore rabbinically it is still prohibited to cook in a pot that is not kosher, even if it hasn't been used over 24 hours. So now if you want to know, why am I koshering a pot that hasn't been used for a week, if it was not kosher, the answer is that it's now a rabbinical requirement.
That's why, why the rabbis said we have to make it.
We find many different boundaries that the rabbis made in many different areas of halacha. We see that many times in Hilchos Shabbos. We see that many times in kashrus. Because if we don't put up boundaries, we know that also about ourselves. If we don't put up boundaries, what happens? And you cross boundaries very quickly. So that's the reason why very often, specifically in kashrus and Shabbos, many other areas of halacha, we have rabbinical extensions that sometimes the rabbi said, okay, we've got to put up a boundary because the rabbi sometimes knew so well, had so much wisdom, that they would be able to understand if you're not careful here, if you don't stop right here, then you will end up making mistakes. Similarly to what we spoke about yesterday and the day before, that if you end up using crockery that's not kosher for cold on a permanent basis, then that's going to be a slippery slope. You're going to always end up using it for hot. So that's why at that point, the rabbis made a ban to use it for permanent use. But the rabbis were very careful because it's not a Jewish thing just to, give more restrictions and more restrictions. So there's a balance over here, which actually I think we can actually see with that use of the non-kosher crockery. The rabbis didn't say now and therefore don't use non-kosher crockery at all, even for cold. They didn't get that far. What they did is you can use it, but use it for occasional use. So you see that the rabbis, they always try to create a balance of on one hand making sure that there's not too many restrictions, yet on the other hand making sure that we're not going to end up in a situation that will be a slippery slope, which will eventually lead us to get to Torah transgressions. Pardon?
Time, let's say on Friday afternoon. Why is it earlier on Shabbos? Why is it later?
Example, that's a great idea, yeah. We definitely say that, we don't do malacha. We stop doing, weekday things quite a few minutes before Shabbos really starts for this reason. Yeah. Yeah. Shlomo.
In the case of a cast iron pan where the flavor is so deep in the utensil, would it be possible to kasher something like that?
We're going to go through materials that are fit for kashering and which materials are not. Cast iron, I think I did research it. I think it's classified as regular metal, as far as I know. And that can be kasher, yeah. Okay, but
Some items that can't be
earthenware,
kasher,
ceramics cannot be kasher. Pardon? What do you say, Baruch?
There's some items that can't be kosher at
No.
all. So just trash.
Yeah.
Ceramic, yeah, ceramic.
Ceramic cannot be kosher.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, like if it was traced, if something traced, basically.
So like a ceramic counter.
Oh,
Yes, people have ceramic counters. I've heard of stone counters,
Yeah,
marble
yeah.
counters,
Never marble, yeah,
Marble.
ceramic,
Marble granite.
marble granite, natural stone can be kosher. Okay, guys. Anyway, I just want to finish up with this. You probably have soon the Rosh class, and that is the reason why we have 24-hour period. Now to be explained about taste particles going off and not going off. So there is a concern over here. In fact, Shlomo, you just mentioned something before that. Why do you even need to have the koshering? You can nullify it. So I mentioned to you, I have one simple answer for you, but there's a better answer. That's this, and this may be a surprise to all of you. There is actually a concern that even if you kosher something. Let's take a pot. You're koshering a pot. Okay? Koshering a pot. How do you kosher a pot?
Boil it. So
Boil it, let it boil over. There's a concern that the amount of taste particles that get released and expelled into the water as you're koshering is more than a 60th versus the water.
So then that whole
And
thing
therefore,
goes
the issue is that we are worried about reabsorption in the pot.
right.
And you didn't achieve anything. Therefore, since it's only a concern, I'll explain this again, we'll add on an extra point to wait 24 hours, in which case we bring down the taste particles from being a Torah prohibition to a rabbinical prohibition, because they're not Torah prohibited taste particles anymore. Putting that together with just a concern of reabsorption, so then we're fine. So let me explain that again. And this is what I think a lot of people are not aware of. They just know there's a 24-hour waiting period. There's an issue. Let's say you have water in your pot, you're koshering your pot. Okay? So now you have all those food particles that are being expelled into your water. Now, what's the ratio between food particles and water? Now, I would have assumed that there is much more than 60 water than food particles.
right.
60 and 1. Apparently, halachically there is a concern that there is a more than 1/60th of food particles than water.
Why? Because the
flows
particles
into the water.
contaminate the whole water.
They
Go into the water.
they all get into the water. Now, if that's true, then you have an issue since the water is boiling. That's going to be reabsorbed now in a pot. So you have achieved absolutely nothing by koshering this utensil. So this is a concern. It doesn't have to be. Because it's only a concern, we add another point. We wait 24 hours. Which the benefit of 24 hours is that you're bringing down those taste particles from a biblical prohibition to a rabbinical prohibition.
Right.
Oh, because then it goes bad.
They go bad. So once you have waited 24 hours, so now you're koshering a pot that's only rabbinically prohibited due to the rabbinically prohibited taste particles. That now gets into the water. So even if there is a situation where you have more than 1/60th of those food particles and it gets reabsorbed, it's on a rabbinical level only. So this is what we're combining. Since it's only a smallish concern, I wouldn't say tiny, since it's not for sure going to happen, it's a small concern about the reabsorption, more than 1/60th. So we add onto that the idea that now it's only rabbinical prohibited, and that's why we wait 24 hours. Okay, does that make sense, guys?
What do we do after 24 hours? Put it in the mikveh now?
No, you put it in hot water when we spoke
I
out.
was saying after the 24 hours.
So then at that point, once you waited 24 hours, you continue with step 3 we spoke out. You put it in boiling hot water, or if it's pot itself, you fill it up with water, you let it boil over. Okay, once that's done, then you put it in cold water. And then
Straight
you're
away.
done.
But I thought waiting
Even the
24
big
hours.
pot.
I thought you wait
Yeah,
24
wait,
hours after.
wait,
you-
no,
after
24 hours after cleaning. Cleaning,
Oh.
waiting,
cleaning.
hot,
Cleaning,
cold.
24 hours.
That's what you do.
Hot.
Okay, guys?
I recently had to do this for like
If
a one
going
in
home-
the kitchen. Oh.
What items would you recommend? Like, what would be like the minimal things? Like, if I'm going home
And you want to
Kinda
kosher
got-
utensils.
and I can buy like a pan.
How long are you going to be home for?
Well, it might literally be like a few days.
Oh, so if you go for a few days, it may just be easier just to get yourself some disposable stuff. Can you do that there or not?
Yeah, but just like
To
to
cook.
eat with. Yeah, to cook with.
So to eat with, you can buy disposable.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you can, to cook with, you can either kasher utensils or you can buy yourself like the most basic utensils you need. And buy yourself one pot. Also, you can kasher a pot. You can totally do that, but you obviously have to communicate with your family. Are they okay with that?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
They'll be fine with that.
I'm just thinking for future. So when I ever.
Yeah, so you can
Try with
kasher
it.
anything. You can kasher anything. I would kasher the most basic utensils, but for a short stay, like sometimes you can avoid the whole thing because heating up, for example, food in an oven can always be done by double covering the food. You can literally stick it in a non-kosher oven. So sometimes,
Really? With
yeah,
2 layers of aluminum?
2 layers of aluminum and
Right.
cover it well though. But if you did that, so you're good. So sometimes, like for a short stay, I would say like if you could avoid the whole complication of kashering, you know, just do this. Just make sure to have food that can go in an oven and double wrap it.
Wow.
Because that gets you around a lot of issues. If you're staying somewhere a lot more long term, so then maybe you do have to look for like the solutions we were talking about now. Of course, you could kasher it even if you're there for 3 days. It's not a problem. You could kasher it, but that's up to you and up to your family dynamic. That's an appropriate solution for you. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shkoda.
All the best, guys.